There has been a slight deviation to the 1-year plan because my office has actually undergone a catastrophic flood.
Hello and welcome to Beauty and the Biz, where we talk about the business and marketing side of plastic surgery. I'm your host, Catherine Maley, author of Your Aesthetic Practice, What Your Patients Are Saying, as well as consultant to plastic surgeons to get them more patients and more profits. Now, today's special guest is Dr. Kate O'Connor. Now, she's a young facial plastic surgeon in private practice in Nashville, Tennessee for the past 3 years. Now, Dr. O'Connor completed her residency in otolaryngology and head and neck surgery from Baylor College of Medicine, and then practiced in Houston for 5 years before completing a fellowship at the New York Center for Facial Plastic and Laser Surgery, where she performed hundreds of deep plane facelifts. Dr. O'Connor, welcome to Beauty and the Biz. It's so great to have you.
Likewise, Catherine, I'm delighted to be here. A big fan of you and your podcast.
Oh, thanks so much. So the question I always ask is, how do you end up in facial plastic surgery? Like I didn't even know anything about facial plastics. I thought you were just a plastic surgeon. So why facial?
Yeah, it kind of happened when I applied for residency. I knew throughout med school it was surgery or bust. That was non-negotiable, that it was going to be some type of surgery. But after finishing like ENT rotations, I just fell in love with the anatomy and the delicacy and the breadth of the field. So that was definitely the gateway drug into the facial plastic sides of things. But as you get more advanced in your training, you kind of get to see the deeper subspecialties and subsets of the field. And so intern year, while you're doing septoplasties and rhinoplasties and facial fractures, as well as tubes and tonsils, kind of get a taste of it. And then by the time you get to your second, third, fourth, fifth year, more of the cosmetic and bigger reconstructive cases are a part of the practice and the training. So I kind of found myself gravitating towards that side of things.
I mean, was anyone in your family a plastic surgeon?
No, yeah, no one in my family is a plastic surgeon. It kind of all came to a head. My dad has had every type of skin cancer under the sun. So we experienced it as like the patient side of things of all of his reconstructions. And then to get to do it as a surgeon was like the gel like that made it all come together.
Gotcha. And then how did you get from Baylor to Houston to New York to Nashville?
Yeah, so exactly. So I did an away rotation at Baylor, which is in Houston, Texas. There's like a really funny history of like there's the Baylor undergrad in Waco, Texas, Baylor Scott and White in Dallas, Texas, and Baylor College of Medicine in Houston, Texas. Way back in the 50s, I believe they were all under the same umbrella, but now they're since very separate and very different. So did an away rotation at Baylor and just really fell in love with the city, the energy, and the program. It is very much a traditional workhouse program. They put us through the ringer. It was an insane surgical volume and insane cases and just, sprint until you're dead and then go a little bit more. And I knew that that's what I wanted and what I needed out of training. We get one shot to be the best we can and learn hand in hand and step with our mentors. So I was like, let's make the most of it. So Baylor just kind of happened on a whim. I picked it because I had heard the rumors and went there and fell in love and then ended up matching there. And through the fellowship process, we go around and you interview with all the different surgeons, getting a peek into the private practice ORs where you're watching them operate and spending a day with their staff was, a dream come true and really set my cap and my trajectory for the rest of the career.
And then how did you end up in Nashville?
And so I ended up in Nashville. My husband had gone to Belmont University here. So when he bounced around to all these places with me, Houston, New York, Indianapolis, he was like, we've lived a lot of places. I have really good, strong ties here, family, friends, all of that. It's a nice little perfect Venn diagram of the places we've lived in that it's a big enough city that you have things going on. It's driving distance to our families, and it really made him happy to be in a place where he had roots and ties for once. So it kind of checked all of our boxes. And then I know you're in California. I'm from Indianapolis. I am done with the snow. Like if I could go anywhere, it would be as far south, west, somewhere out of the cold. So this was kind of our compromise where the seasons are like a little tampered down.
Right. And then I saw your beautiful office. Now, explain your office because it doesn't look like one.
No, it doesn't. So my office is on Music Row, which is 16th and 17th Street here in Nashville. And Music Row history is significant to the world of country music. It's because where a lot of the publishing houses and record labels started and have their offices still. So 3 doors down from me is where Morgan Wallen records. Across the street are some other artists. So it's like a really nice um, calming street and one that has like meant a lot to the city of Nashville, even as it's trying to change and commercialize and commoditized. I knew for my practice, I wanted something that modeled some of the more private offices I had seen through training and fellowship, where patients felt like they could park right in front, walk in through the front door, and not be seen by anyone, and just feel like a very concierge, um, inviting and welcoming space. So I wanted it to be non-intimidating and very just private and homey. So my office is a converted music studio. All of these buildings started as old bungalows built anywhere from like the 1920s to the 1980s. They've all had many businesses and lives and things through them. And I saw it and it kind of checked all of those boxes: parking lot out front, parking lot in the back, walk straight through the door, have the whole run of the place. And it just felt very right.
Well, I love the brick. We don't have a lot of brick out here with earthquake country,
Yeah.
and it's just so pretty, and I just love that. And by the way, I am a closet country fanatic, so I know who
Oh,
Morgan is, and a lot of people have no idea what you just said there, but I can't get enough country. Love,
yeah,
love,
it's pretty great. Well, come on over to Nashville. We're swimming in it.
yeah. So I remember talking to you a few years ago regarding the surgical situation there and finding a place to
Yeah.
do surgery. Could you explain what's going on with that and has it improved at all?
Sure, definitely. I'm sure what a lot of surgeons around the country have realized is that post-pandemic, when our industry boomed and different I don't know if you want to say migration patterns, but just like moving that the patients did, that surgeons did, that people did to different states, we saw a major crunch in the availability of ORs. And it's something that still hasn't resolved or really caught up as far as I've paid attention. You know, a ton of people are moving to Nashville, just like other big cities, Austin, and those kind of hot spots where they didn't have enough ORs. I remember a hospital, I called them to inquire about getting on staff and admitting privileges and block time. And they basically said, "You seem really great. We wouldn't even bother applying because we don't even have time for you." So that's like, one of those things you're like, okay, did not foresee this coming. So it's something that is still in flux. Myself and then a lot of other surgeons have just started kind of poking around and building your own surgery suite, which is obviously something that people can have really strong opinions on, but I view as invaluable just for that sense of control. I have kind of seen and watched, there's a senior surgeon who's been in town who's really well respected and great, 20 years of block time, and they're taking time away, which is just things that I wouldn't have predicted or expected. So now they're being forced to build. So it's definitely something to be mindful of, just what you're willing to tolerate in terms of risk. Building a surgery center obviously has its own challenges and things that you must undertake, but at least at the end of the day, you're not at the whim of a hospital deciding, nope, we're only going to do orthopedic cases here, or the surgeon you're renting from saying, actually, I'm going to retire and sell to private equity. We've had a good thing going, but you know, sayonara. So it's definitely still a work in progress, but I think we're kind of all ending up with our own.
So are you in the throes of building your own right now in your current space?
Yeah, so that is the top line of my 1-year plan. There has been a slight deviation to the 1-year plan because my office has actually undergone a catastrophic flood. So a month ago, I got a call from my practice manager 4 days before I'm supposed to leave for Santa Marta, Colombia on the annual mission trip that we go on, that says the office is flooded. And I'm kind of going about my morning routine. The dog was walked, have a latte, and I was like, "Okay, I'll be over there, see what we need to do." And she kinda, like, hung up really quickly and strangely, and when I got there, the ceilings have caved in, there's just standing water everywhere, and she's kinda like, "I was concerned that you weren't understanding the concern in my voice when we were talking," because it was pretty dramatic. So we're in the throes of undergoing mitigation and gutting it and starting all over. So it could be a beautiful blessing if it gets to speed up the timeline of the OR build out. But it has been a fun little detour, so to speak.
Wait, you're handling this very well. I'm sure you weren't at the time, but how did that happen?
Yeah. It
Mhm.
was a freak thing. A pipe burst in an upstairs apartment. Like we talked about, having a converted space, a more mature space. The prior building owner who passed away, I had been leasing from him. And then in May of 2023, I actually got the opportunity to purchase the building, which I am so glad I did. Right. So now that even kind of ties back further to what we said about having control of your destiny, your space, and your location, and clinic time and OR. So he passed away. He had put in an apartment so that musicians who were recording in his studio could have a place to stay if they were just like traveling through, kind of short-term stay, etc. And it was that toilet. that caused all the issues. So some point over the weekend, it had just been gushing, gushing, gushing. We had no idea to walk in Monday morning to just all 3 floors flooded.
Oh, crazy. Was anyone living there?
No, yeah, the heat since I had my lease, for the past 3 years, I didn't want anyone there. The whole point was I wanted, control over the space, and the idea of having a random human bouncing around up there was not appealing. So it was just a space where I would go poke my head around once a month to be like, "Yeah, lights work, things look good," and then, like, back downstairs we go. It just kinda was a little museum to the past that we didn't touch. There's, like, some relics up there, some Lee Greenwood stuff. Like, there's a lot of odds and ends, but I just would kind of go poke around and say that was it. And until it became, um, yeah, uh, a mess.
You know what, though? I think it's a great opportunity, especially if you had insurance, because you wanted to do a build out anyway. This is kind of forcing the issue probably sooner than you wanted. But is it easier to get a permit, like all the permits you need for this? Isn't it easier now to do that than if you had tried to retrofit it as is?
Great question. We're going to find out in real time, kind of now undergoing the process. It's something that has taught me a lot, right? If you want to talk about mistakes, lessons learned, like there's 60,000 bundled into this. Generally with it, permitting, it doesn't sound like it's going to be sped up. The reason being is that they're still going to want to build to code and go through proper permitting because of the scope of the damage. Each state has different laws on what permits you have to pull to rebuild, but after you get to a certain square footage, they're like, it's a gut job, it's a brand new project. And that unfortunately is where we're at.
Hello there. Quick pause to ask you if you have gaps in your practice draining your time, profits, and peace of mind. If so, I can help you streamline, grow, and take the guesswork out of your practice. Book your practice growth strategy review at catherinemaley.com and let's turn those gaps into growth. Now, back to the podcast. Where are you practicing?
Yeah, so I'm renting space from another surgeon in town, which was, I mean, a godsend. Just the collegiality is something that I'll always be grateful for. I called around, to talk to a few surgeons about renting space since this was never on my bingo card. Other people have successfully rented for years, but I was already tucked away and running and happy in my little kingdom. And he was like, "Yep, we have the space, and I would just want someone to grant me the same courtesy if something were like that were to happen to me." So I've officially been renting from him for the last month or so, and our patients have done a fantastic job about, adapting to it and being understanding. There were a few that kind of like were bristly. Like I remember I had a consult cancel, be like, "Well, this is ridiculous. How could you do this to me?" And I was like, "Do what to you? I didn't want this either." But it kind of helps sort like, the cream rises and it shows how loyal people are and they're willing to kind of ask about the building and make sure we're okay and that I'm all right. And I'm like, "No, no, this is about you. Like you just had your facelift. Ignore me. I'm fine. We're cruising." So we've been with him and it's been nice, just trying to be good guests though is going to be the biggest thing since we are renting for it's his kingdom now.
What's the ETA on that? Do you have any idea?
I mean, I'm predicting it to be like a year plus probably, just thinking of all of it.
And
Yeah.
he's okay with that?
So far, I mean, it's good kind of cross-pollination as I kind of think of what he gains out of it. It's extra eyes, ears, and footprints through his building that may not have come otherwise because I'm bringing my entire patient base with me for who are new patients, established patients, Botox patients, filler patients, it's all there. Especially, face, body, the things that we don't do. It
Mm.
could be something where he's getting a secondary benefit.
Right. That's another good point to network in your community and never burn bridges. You never know when you need to know somebody or when they can help you out and when you can help each other out. So many cities, they are so competitive.
Yeah.
They're not fun competition. But then I've been to other ones, like I go to the local, let's say Newport Beach County Society of Plastic Surgeons. There'll be like 50 surgeons in the room that are total competitors, couldn't be better friends. They're nicest, they get along completely, and then you go somewhere else and they don't talk to each other.
Oh, it is wild, and I love that, and I would love to hold up, like, those types of cities as the ideal because, like, competition kind of almost implies that it should be a zero-sum game, which I don't think that's true. I think that if we, like, help each other, we grow the industry and show patients that it can be safe and excellent results, and we take care of each other, and it makes patients more likely to kinda wanna jump in the pond with us than if you're feeling like you're fighting over crumbs or it just kind of ends up being reductive that, like, you should compete with yourself and be collegial and collaborative with the surgeons around you.
Well, I was going to ask, like, what are your plans for growth? But I'm not going to ask that. Another thing I was going to ask was, as a facial plastic surgeon, how important is the non-surgical to you? Because not everyone's ready for that facelift right off the bat. They need to like tiptoe into it. But on the other hand, you can't have a big med spa. So how are you handling the surgical versus non-surgical, and is it important to you?
Perfect. So, like, I view non-surgical as an important part simply because surgery isn't for everyone. Like, I myself, I plan on going kicking and screaming. I want my lids done. I'm going to get a facelift, a brow lift. Like, we got my laundry list and my timeline. But that's because I've always been like that. I respect, what it does for us. And I really see value. Someone else could get to a totally different conclusion. And there's some lovely patients who are perfectly content with their 20 units of Botox. They think they look amazing. They walk out the door and like that's going to be their path forever. So I still see value in like having that on board and providing that for them because if our job's to help patients, cutting them off or just sending them out into the world, I think I can do a great job for them. So I'm going to show up and do that for them. It's not something I really like push or market though, simply because surgery is my passion. It's what I invested so much time into mastering and just always striving for, doing the non-surgical stuff. I like it and I'm glad to have that for patients, but it's not something that you know, I don't run ads or I don't market. It's just going to be organic or surgical patients. So you're exactly right. Like I don't have a big med spa. Right as the flood was coming about, I actually was in contact with a nurse practitioner to finally bring someone on who I trust and value as an injector, and she's still on board. So it's going to be just kind of a slower on board, which is great. She's someone who I would 100% trust my patient and my patients with, and so it'll be kind of fun to see how she adapts, but it's more of just waiting for that right person. So I still, the flood's a part of it, but it's like I still got big plans for the future and big plans for growth and she's going to be a good addition, I hope.
And she's going to wait for you?
Yeah, so it's kind of awesome in today's age. I've heard a lot on your podcast. We talk about how hiring is definitely one of the most challenging portions of this, and the HR side of things. But just it's also been a kind of fun time to reflect on how we can be flexible or a little bit more creative. So her thing is that she only wants to work part time. She's got a little one who's under a year and a half, I think, and so kind of having a situation where I'm like, cool, like I don't need you pumping filler and Botox 5 days a week if this is all you want and all you need, we can work something out. So just kind of being flexible and meeting each other where we need to be.
What's your favorite procedures? Are you doing rhino and face or?
Exactly. So I always joke to patients, my favorite procedure is the one that I'm about to do. We are so blessed. We have the coolest jobs in the world. It's amazing. I do obviously because of my history and where I trained and where I've been, facelifting is just always going to have that edge, I think, but I love noses too. We're just in a really exciting time to talk about preservation rhinoplasty and preservation facelift and the things that we're building into our practice. I just think it really is like the golden age to be a plastic surgeon, particularly a facial plastic surgeon.
Well, have you noticed at the meetings, there's such a hot topic about deplane versus SMES,
Yeah.
and there it's very uh, polar, like you're one
Tension.
side or the other. Wow! And then
Totally.
somebody else did one called Awake Deplane, and I thought, oh dear God, where are you going with all these facelifts? But where are you on the? Well, obviously you're deplane, but do your patients understand that?
Yeah, patients, it's really interesting time, exactly like you said. Obviously I'm a more early career surgeon, but have kind of heard enough and paid attention enough to understand that there's been kind of contention and differing sides to technique for the last 30 years. And I think that's probably not a bad thing. It means we're still assessing and learning and growing and trying to do the best for our patients and get to where we can. My bias is deep plane facelifting, just simply because of the surgeons that I admire, how I was trained, the results that I see that I'm like, I gravitate towards that. That looks like a beautiful face to me. That's my aesthetic, and it's kind of what just makes the most sense to me. So I'm like planting my flag in the deep plane camp. But knowing that, like, hey, the whole point of being surgeons and scholars is that you're supposed to question and push back and try to get better and learn. So if data comes out that shows we're all wrong about all of this, here's actually how the physiology works, well then follow the data. We should be better than just being kind of tribalistic. That being said, patients have really caught on. I feel like they come in asking for that. They seek that out. They say, "You're a deep plane facelift surgeon. That's what I want." And I don't know if we would have saw that coming, that they would have the nuance. It's getting less and less common that I feel like I have to explain what the difference between the types of facelifts are.
No kidding. Yeah. Wow. Everyone's so educated. The internet and social media have changed everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you find any patient trends happening? They're getting younger.
I will say younger, particularly in facelifting, they kind of want to view it almost more as a preventative procedure, which kind of brings up its own, bag of worms and questions and things. I definitely think that facelifts can be almost in line of that, like, affirming and preventative stuff in the right patient, right? We just need to follow their anatomy. It's not some cookie cutter thing like where maybe if, 30 years ago where it's like TikTok, nope, you have to wait 15 years till you hit 60. I'll see you then. Because like our genetics are different, our lifestyle's different, the way we're aging's different. And I think obviously because of things like Zoom and like we're doing, people are so much more aware of their faces and their barometer for change is just you know, decreasing by the minute. So I would say there's a continued shift towards younger. And then too, just like you said, a little bit more educated. They come in with very nuanced questions and they really want to know like plan from top to bottom and why, not just, okay, you're gonna do what you say you're gonna do. They want rationale behind it too.
Well, because I've been around for a long time, in the older days, the cosmetic patients so often the facelift patient they waited until they were 65, looked like hell, and then did this full on transformation, and it's really jarring. Like
Yeah.
a lot good and bad can happen from that, and I just think the technology has changed so much that why wait? I'm a big firm believer in take care of things as you're going, but don't start too young
Yeah.
because if you're already fiddling with that, I just
I know.
psychologically that can really mess with you. And I feel for these young girls if they're already feeling that pressure. Wait till they get older. Oh my God.
No, you perfectly put. It's a tough time for sure. And having guardrails and just trying to do what's right for people is going to be the guiding light forward. But I mean, it's exciting times. It's just one that, yeah, the pressure cooker feels on for everyone, patients, surgeons, general public, the world.
So regarding marketing, let's just talk about branding for a second because you're kind of stuck right now. Like like you have a funny address, you have a temporary address, you have a temporary everything right now. How are you handling that?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm trying to actually add just the most consistency. While I'm not in the physical space, here's the advantage. While I said one thing I, wish I had maybe had always had was my own OR, at least this has not disrupted my surgical agenda, right? Patients, we're still operating the same places we've been. All of that, my out of town patients, we're still doing Zoom consults just like we've been. The only thing that's a little bit different was just some of those like on the cusp patients where maybe they had consulted with us, but we're in the process of booking, they're seeming to be the ones that are having the hardest time adjusting. New consults coming in, they don't know any better. They show up and they're like, "Cool, this is where you work. You seem great. Let's go." So it's really been kind of smoother than I feared, I would say. So my plans are just to try to add stability. Like I don't want this to be a time where I look back and think, "Oh gosh, that was such like a hardship." Because I think kind of you addressed it. There is real opportunity here. The demolition's been done. So potentially, if I wanted to go chips in and build out my nature of the building flooding, and it's also kind of given us a lot of time to refine our processes. I think that like systems are going to be always what kind of separate the great from the good. And it's been a really good reflective time to show maybe where we were blind to inefficiencies in our process. And now that we're in a brand new space where we don't have our normal setup to kind of see where those cracks could be, it's just really helping kind of polish and refine everything. So I'm kind of driving my team crazy with coming up with projects and ideas and things that are sharpening that knife.
Regarding the team, did everybody hang in there with you or did you lose anybody?
Didn't lose anyone. I've ran a pretty lean ship, with the addition of the nurse practitioner coming on. I have a patient care coordinator who kind of helps function as my office manager and a receptionist, and they are both just wonderful people who my patients can tell they're kind and invested and really there to provide what they can at any junction. So they've been amazing, all hands on deck of running back to the office to get things because like 1/4 of the building is fine. So we kind of moved a lot of stuff there. And so they've been just lights out of just being flexible and adaptable when I know that's like really hard. That's not in their job description and not part of the role to be, you know, gopher, but they've been awesome.
How far is the distance between the two offices?
1.2 miles.
Oh, that's not bad at all.
Bad at
Okay.
all. So yeah, that was a really great one because another colleague who kind of offered us some space, they were located probably about 20 to 25 minutes outside of town, which is lovely and so generous, but just kind of being so close has huge advantages.
Oh, I hear you. I wouldn't have gone 20 miles away or 20 minutes away.
Yeah.
That would have been a jump for a lot of patients. So what's going on with the marketing? Do you have to stop marketing, or do you keep marketing and you just use a different address? I haven't noticed it on your social media. Is it kind of, you're just kind of keeping it quiet, or?
Yeah, so we're putting a post up and I thought this was very cute. It's like, just like a deep plane facelift, the best things are happening inside. So we kind of are talking about a renovation there. We have a banner out front because of those long-term patients where the muscle memory kicks in and they just show up. So it's now like a cute little like banner to be like, as a friendly reminder, we're in a temporary space. I haven't changed the location address on Google or anything simply because of just the SEO implications. I haven't
Bad.
sat down and asked my team about this, but just kind of thinking about my NAP score and all the things, I'm like, consistency seems to be a priority. And so for now, it's just kind of like I can unlock the foyer, deliveries are still going there. It's like everything's there, just except for the team and the patients.
Where's the phone? I assume your phones went down. What happened with that?
Phones with modern stuff, it's all voice over internet. So our apps just kind of carry it with us. And so when we're plugged in, they're answering it on their cell phones and just going from there.
Nice. So how are you differentiating yourself? Because I do think half of California, well, a quarter of the California moved to Florida, and the other went to Texas. So a third, a third, a third, and then the others went to Tennessee,
Yeah.
because you can buy a lot for your
So
money in Tennessee. My Lord,
yeah.
it was insane. Like, you have California show up. I'll bet your house prices have skyrocketed because
Mhm.
we'll show up and overbid any day because we're
Oh
like,
yeah.
really? This is only 1 million? How is that possible? So,
And cash pay and the whole thing. Oh yeah, it's definitely changed. So in terms of differentiating myself, I just view it as I am not the best at branding. That's a weakness. We can talk about that. You've always done so well about kind of coaching us through the marketing side and the social media side. So my online brand isn't that strong, but I do feel like my personal brand is. And patients have so much opportunity and variety of surgeons to choose from. And I think that's to an advantage. All of us come with our own aesthetic and um, bias of what we think is beautiful or what we think is good. And patients are going to be drawn to that. If they like my work and my noses more than someone else, that's going to speak for themselves on the gallery and they're going to come to me. And if they don't, vice versa. Some of the things that just are my unique signature are the fact that, I am a female plastic surgeon and a younger one. So some people really, really vibe with that. And that is what they're into. They're like, I only want a face person. You check the box. I want a female surgeon. You check the box. And I want someone who I feel is studying and always working and improve, and you check the box. So like that's great that they have already kind of pre-selected that. And then two, just being niche down where I'm not doing everything too. And the final part being just like personality fit. This is something I always tell patients, we get to do this. We don't have to do this. So you should feel really comfortable with your surgeon. And as surgeons, we need to feel comfortable with our patients because if awkward or uncomfortable conversations need to happen, like that trust and familiarity is everything. So between kind of that mismatch together, I just feel that stands apart and helps me find the patients that I want, and I love them.
it does feel like it's gone more personality now, but I also think the patients who don't know any better, they're assuming you're a good surgeon. Like, a lot of them just assume that, but I do think you have to prove it. And in social media, you women, by the way, are very good at explaining things. I will just say that in general. Explaining, like, let's say a lip lift, you'll go to great lengths explaining it and why your in an innovative technique is different, and then getting the patient's reaction to it and all of that. That's really important because you never want to assume that the patient knows that you're good. You want to keep telling them, you know, you're like more than just okay, you're really good, and this is why. But then they love you for your personality. And frankly, I think that's the kind of practice you're building anyway right now, kind of boutique-ish, word of mouth. But then again, social media can bring in the out of towners too. So, are you trying for that, or you just
Yeah. That's a great segue, and it's kind of like more that, like, cognitive dissonance. I feel like so much we know what we need to do, and we need to be reminded of it more than we need to be taught. So it's kinda like, if you look at my business plan, like, it's, like, right there, right? I have it, and it's just instead almost like that internal coaching of, like, pulling the trigger, of where it's not something I enjoy doing or find natural, but it's, like, kind of reworking your mind to be like, "Okay, that can be true, and I'm still gonna do it anyway, because my patients need it." And so that's kind of I'm almost there, but it's oh my gosh, Catherine, it's the bane of my existence. So close yet so far.
it's time to brag about how great you are. Just saying. Yeah. So, is social media taking a lot of your time, or how are you addressing it? Because it can take up a lot of your time or a little time, depending on your strategy.
I know. Well, like, since I said I have my idealized strategy and versus the current reality, my current reality is social media takes up almost like none of my time simply because it's just like it hasn't been a priority. And on one hand, that's really great. It's kind of out of sight, out of mind. I spend minimal time. I don't post my own life, just kind of like offline, doing it whatever, while still intellectually knowing that, hey, it's 2024, patients are on there, they're searching for you, it's what they want. So it's more of like when I kind of get that gnawing gut feeling of like, it's been too long, like you just simply cannot be gone too long, or they think, what happened? Where have you been? Are you dead? Are you still here? So kind of I have my personal social like Instagram. Then we also set up one for the practice. And that's simply because as I imagined the practice growing, I wanted a kind of central umbrella hub where if another surgeon were to come on, or this a nurse injector or someone, where they could have a shared space and a shared page while still having their own individual brand. And so that was how I structured that. So my staff will help me with the business's Instagram, and they do posts and things for me.
So that Instagram, like, let's say that's called Harmony Facial
Exactly.
Plastic Surgery, right? And
Yep.
then you have your personal.
Exactly.
I will say though, I wouldn't ignore social. I do think that's where we're all heading. If you didn't get there yet, I think you need to. I think AI and SEO is going to get really convoluted. I highly, highly recommend putting some time in. By the way, you have done the little bit you have done. You've gotten a lot of face before and after photos. So how are you getting that? Do you have any tips for getting the consent?
Absolutely. It's just kind of the tips that you bring up is I've toyed around with different things. Right. What I'm currently doing for getting face and nose consent is that I'm the one asking them. It just kind of seems right. We have that relationship already. I haven't yet see where they feel like, "Oh, it's the doctor, so I have to say yes," because we played around where the staff has, and we kinda compared the numbers of what patients agreed to. But it's just something that I've kind of, like, taken on of, like, no, I feel like it's kind of my responsibility to ask them. And so, it's been fine. It could always be better, right? But the goal is to ask as many people as you can, because I've surprised myself with who says yes. That's a big critique, is that internal bias, because I personally don't post on my life, or if my surgeon wanted to post something, I'd be like, I don't know. I should not assume that everyone falls under that. And so that kind of took some internal coaching and work to realize, like, just because that's how I feel, that's not how they feel.
Just ask everybody. I would do it in a heartbeat and nobody asked me because I think I'm intimidating, but I do it, no problem. I have no problem with that. Isn't that funny? Yeah, we
It
have to get our own beliefs out of things or we'll never get where we're going, you know? Just stay open. Give me a crazy patient or staff story you care to share.
Yeah, absolutely. The staff stories, luckily nothing too crazy where like no one's embezzled, or the things that commonly come up. I've definitely had mistakes in hiring. My first staff that I brought on, it just wasn't a good fit. And I kind of knew that from the beginning, but I felt very young. It's your first hire. Like, if you fire this employee, then you have no one and you're on your own again. And so kind of let it fester for too long. And it did end pretty terribly. She kind of like screamed and cried at me for about 15 minutes before I was like, I got to get out of here somewhere and cut this off. So that was definitely kind of a huge leadership learning curve and opportunity there, just to kind of reflect on why I knew it was a mismatch and how I could have held that differently. My craziest patient story is one that actually, like, brought a lot of anxiety into my life. I had a facelift patient who no showed her first appointments. So post-op day 1, always see them really early in the morning to take the dressings down, check for hematoma, check the skin, all of that stuff, make sure everything's on board. And she no-showed. That's kind of strange. You just invested in your face, all of this. So we called her, pretty much hourly and could not get a hold of her, could not get a hold of the responsible adult that had signed her out and was supposed to be taking care of her. Um, and it was around like 5:30 or 6:30 PM and we still hadn't gotten a hold of her. And I was getting ready. I'm like, do I file a missing persons report? Do I call the police? What do I do? I was going to sleep in my office, like whatever it took to make sure they got there okay. And they showed up and her responsible party was intoxicated and had driven her to the office after kind of going on her own little adventure party bender and drove my patient to the office while intoxicated. So we had to have and call someone to come get her and kind of circumvent all that and try to separate the two because she kind of just was abandoned and held away from us.
Wait, the patient wasn't drinking.
Her ride,
Her who?
her responsible party, the
Well,
one that
this
had
wasn't even like a family member. This was just a friend,
mm,
and the friend was drinking
heavily, yes.
like all day, and she was just held captive with this friend.
That she had gotten no pain medication. She had gotten none of her prescribed medication, no antibiotics, no steroids, none of the things that I usually do.
That's crazy.
It was scary. It was very scary. And luckily, like everyone's fine. Great result. Like we got through it, but it was like one of those of just like I did not anticipate this one.
What kind of friend was that?
A longtime friend, it's just kind of interesting that I guess just decisions can get made and they can kind of spiral out of control. I'm not quite certain, but yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I would hope the person that's going to take care of me is somebody responsible. My God.
I
Do you know how
know.
bad that could have gone on your end? Oh
Oh,
boy.
nightmare material. It's just like, oh my gosh. Yeah.
Well, you have funny things that happen to you, but then you have really good luck too. So I personally, I believe everything works out just fine. So I try not to overreact because I love to overreact to things, and so I've learned that with just plain maturity. But they always say it's just not worked out yet.
That's a perfect attitude. Yeah, no, it was one of those of just, oh my gosh, yeah, just getting ready and it just taught you so much. So you can bet that our screening and vetting process of who is taking patients home has tightened significantly. It can't be this is just my best friend Susie Joe. She's going to be my ride. It definitely forced us to kind of change things.
Well, and she's driving drunk. I mean, the whole thing is insane. Were there any disciplinary action taken from this
I
lady?
did not, and I guess maybe that is something that in retrospect was a mistake that I made, but it kind of felt like, hey, I was just so relieved that everyone was okay, right? Because you think about it like this is an elective procedure. These patients are trusting us with their lives. What if she had had like an adverse complication and is in a hospital I don't know about, or just any number of health things that could have happened to anyone? So my first gut reaction was just making sure that everyone was physically okay. And then two, we found another responsible party to come in and help get both of them home safely.
My God. I mean, at that point, Uber would have been better. I know we're not allowed to do that, but wow, like
Yeah.
transportation's a big deal in our industry. I think we have to figure that out. Like, who gets to drive somebody back and forth? Because that's really a big objection to having surgery. Who's going to take care of me during the day when everyone I know works? No one's sitting around waiting for me to, heal, and that's a big deal.
It is a big deal. Yeah. Someone, that's a great kind of reflection point. If someone solves that, I think you're right. They could help take a barrier away where a patient would be a great candidate, but they just feel like they can't because of rides or childcare, any number of things. Those are like the little things that kind of pop up that can block us without realizing it.
For sure. I mean, I have some ideas about it, but not enough to do anything about it. So, so,
Yeah.
so, so
I think there are like some of the concierge nurses though will do rides. I've kind of started to see that pop up, which I'm like, yes, girl, that's fantastic.
Right. Well, I do know some of the top facial plastics, they do have a nurse go home with that patient. It's just part of their package and they're certified credentials, that it's completely trustworthy. And that takes a lot of the hassle away from the family member who, what do I have to do for like, because a facelift's a kind of big deal, you
Yeah.
know?
That's a huge deal.
Um, yeah. So anyway, we'll work that out some other day. Last question. Tell us something interesting we don't know about you.
Something interesting you don't know about me. I would say kind of one of the things that like is definitely living on the sidelines is how much like sports and athletics are a part of my life. I 100% wouldn't be the person I am today, or even the surgeon I was if I didn't play sports and didn't build that into my entire existence. I was a collegiate swimmer, which was just my favorite thing to do in the entire world until it wasn't. So the day after my last college meet, I hung up my goggles and have not touched them since. And then my family's like big love language is golf. We all grew up golfing, still do. Like I had the opportunity to be on a state championship team in high school, and it just still shaped everything that I do. And all of the kind of parallels I take from business and surgery all happened around and centered in athletics. And love going to sports, love watching, pick any of it. Still trying hockey. Hockey's been the slowest like one for me to kind of get into. But with the Preds here, even though they're not great this year, we're trying.
Is there a female hockey team you want to play or you want to watch?
No, watch. Like
Okay,
now the only things I play is I'll run, I do a lot of yoga. I think it's just so good for our health and like back and spine and mental health as surgeons. So I do a ton of yoga, weightlifting. I'll play golf, but the rest I'm just an avid fan of what they do.
nice, nice. Are your teams any good in Tennessee? I don't know anything about
Um,
it.
they're okay. Like I'm kind of a weird hodgepodge. Like, it's very polarizing. I'm a Houston Astros fan. I don't care about the hate. I love them. It's fine. Maybe my beige flag, red flag for some people. And then growing up in Indianapolis, I'm still a Pacers and a Colts fan. And so the Colts and the Titans are in the same NFL league. So I kind of just ignore everything about the Titans. They have a hockey team and a soccer team. And so everyone's kind of mid to bottom here in Nashville. Maybe one day for the hometown teams, they'll do something.
Gotcha. Does Nashville have any good golf courses?
There are a few around here. Yeah, absolutely. And then I'll still go home to Indiana, and then my parents joined a club in Houston that they belong to, and they go down and visit Texas more than they visit me. They love it down there. I think if we had stayed, I would see them all the time. I know. Well, it's kind of fun. I'm pregnant with our first, so maybe we'll get.
Congratulations. I was just going to say, you just need to get the grandkids
I
working.
know that it's maybe it'll come, and I'll get to see them a bit more
Oh my
because
gosh, on top of everything else, and you're expecting.
top of
Oh,
everything. So, like, it's kind of like a crazy thing, like, you mentioned taking it well. You've been in this industry long enough to know that, like, the challenges and the roadblocks and the U-turns, like, they're not gonna stop. It's
never
just
change. They never end. It's
never
always
end.
something.
And so just kind of my MO is just, like, I've taken a lot of time just, like, coaching and thought work and things of like, you can control your thoughts control your feelings control your action. Whatever the circumstance is, that is outside of you. So, yeah, the only time it gets a little on me is my dear husband. He was ready to throw his hands up because the flood happened. 4 days later, I went to Colombia for that mission trip and I was still in my first trimester. And he's like, "Does God need to smite you? Like, does you just need a stop sign? What is happening here?" But like, now look, everything's fine.
Oh my God. Didn't you have morning sickness or no?
I feel pretty blessed. I was very, very tired, not much morning sickness. Um, it was just like that, like, oh my gosh, wanting to hit the dining room table, like falling asleep, eating, kind of tired. And luckily that's passed.
Yeah, but I mean, in Colombia, like,
Yeah,
the
they
food's different, the water's different. Come on.
yeah, we always do bottled water just because of where it is in Colombia.
Yeah.
And they spoiled me so much. Once they found out I was pregnant, like they have their own kind of Ronald McDonald house that is staffed by like Colombian women. So they cook snacks and food and they just like had stockpiles for me where I'm like, guys, I'm pregnant, not dying. Like it was just it was too much. They were so sweet and accommodating.
Oh, well, congratulations.
Thank
That's going to wrap it up for us. If anyone wanted to get a hold of you, how would they do so? I know it's Harmony,
Yes.
facialplasticsurgery.com.
Yes, that my, website's actually just harmonysurgery.com
Oh,
just to
got
try to shorten it for patients.
it.
And then my email is just Dr. O'Connor, OCONNOR at harmonysurgery.com. They can also
Gotcha.
send me DMs since one of the takeaways is I'm bumping up my social media presence after seeing your face and knowing all that you do. So they can DM me or in any other way.
What's your handle?
It's same thing, Dr. Kate O'Connor.
Dr. Kate O'Connor. Yeah. I'm sure I was O'Malley when we came over and we dropped our O, but you kept your O'Connor, your O.
I
Yeah.
did. It's been the bane of my existence. My husband does not have an apostrophe, and he's always like, "See how easy your life could be?" But it's like it's just kinda cool. It's this, like, standalone thing until it bites me in the butt with
Right.
paper. You've lived that life of where TSA is like, "Oh, it doesn't match," and you're like, "It's the same person."
Uh, there's this comedian who talks about that. His name is Nate, and one thing says Nathaniel, and another says something else, and he's like, "I can't get past TSA with this. This is not working for me." It's so funny. Anyway, it's been a pleasure. Congratulations on the expecting baby. That's amazing. Okay, good for you, everyone. That's going to wrap it up for us today. If you have any questions or feedback for me, please leave them on my website at CatherineMaley.com. You can certainly subscribe, or I'd love a good review at Beauty in the Biz. And then if you want to DM me, my Instagram is Catherine Maley MBA. Thank you so much, and we will talk again soon.
The fastest way to success is to model other successful surgeons who have what you want, but you can only see their results, not the path they took to get there. So you continue to jump from one thing to another, hoping to find something that will work for you too. But it rarely does. So try this shortcut instead. It's guaranteed to move you forward. I compiled my intellectual property to grow cosmetic revenues, everything I've gleaned over the years, into one playbook of the most successful practices and what they do to win. Go to cosmeticpracticevault.com and let's grow your cosmetic revenues.